Hello. I hope you can see me. Yeah, it'll be great if you can type something. Hi. If you can you hear me? I think we will wait for a couple more minutes to see if someone else is going to join. We will wait. Indeed. I'll probably wait for another maybe um, 5, 7 minutes, maybe. No, a couple more minutes. Yeah, hi. If you have joined us recently, hello. Maybe we can say hello. And while we are waiting, I just would like you to, in the comment box, can you tell me uh, why would you like to look at your English language, or why would you like to improve your English language? So if you can, hi Mina. Good evening and welcome. We are going to have a very modest start to hopefully hundreds of evenings, mornings, afternoons. I'm not sure what time we'll be meeting in the future, but we will certainly meet as frequently as possible. The purpose of English Cafe is to uh, have a conversational environment where we could look at English as a language that both impresses us, and in some cases, it's a language that would oppress people. But the purpose of this gathering is to look at how perhaps we can understand this language better. How do we get the best out of uh, the language? And perhaps to look at how we can uh, understand the nuances of this language so that you will eventually end up using it more easily, more comfortably, and of course, to use it in your spheres of engagement, whether it is work, education, family, or social lives. So, it'd be great if you can comment in the chat box your reason for improving English. Why would you like to improve your language, or why would you like to spend time on your English proficiency? I appreciate your response. Yeah, if you're joining us now, please write in the chat box, why would you like to improve your English? Whether you're a student, whether you are a professional, a business person, homemaker, and no matter which country you're from, because as you know, English is a universal language. And as a matter of fact, English doesn't belong to the native speakers of English anymore, isn't it? So I'd like to get some response from you. So if you can write, someone can say your reason or your purpose in improving your English. Can I get some response? Yeah, can I get some response, please? To have better communication skills, yes, and um, great. That's a good reason. And how about others? Uh, well, with accent, pronunciation, etc. Perfect. And anyone else? So let me get started. And I think I will spend another half an hour with you tonight. And because this is just an introduction or an introductory, hello and hi, and then we will set the agenda for the future sessions before we finish this gathering. So, first of all, my name is Dr. Ganesh Koromanil. I, uh, you know, I originate from India. I'm an Indian Australian. My parents were from India, and I was the first child in my family to go to university. And we'll talk about the relevance of first in the family in education sometime in the future. And um, also, uh, the interesting fact is that English is not my second language. English is not my third language. English is not my fourth, even. English happens to be my fifth language, as a matter of fact. So maybe some of you speak English as your second or third language. And the native speakers, of course, speak English as their first language. And there are many others who, especially the second, third generations of migrant families in English speaking countries who speak English as their first language. So where do I come from? It's very, very important before we start working together and understand my perspectives about uh, you know learning and teaching language. As a profession, as a professional, I have taught English most of my life, and I also had the opportunity to be the examiner for International English Language Testing System with Cambridge. So that has been my background. But I thought I've come to a stage in my life where I thought I could have conversations with people who are looking at English as a language, either with or either with or with what do you say, um, with a lot of respect, maybe, or an aspiration to speak better, or they're just looking at English as a tool to get by in their in your work life. So uh, my life, if you look at the way I acquired English or I learned English, I can tell you until I reached grade 8. So you're looking at the age of around 14, I suppose, I was uh, I had never used English for regular communication. I could not speak in English, as a matter of fact. Yes, I went to an English medium school, but I could not speak English. And then you might be wondering then, how come, after all that, how did I make it this far with the language? Because I have taught English in India, internationally, and of course in Australia. So how did I make it? So one of the major thing about language is that I can tell you now that language is not a destination. It is not something to be achieved. It must be seen as a journey. So these English cafe meetings, if you could see them not as lessons, not as a course, but as a journey, it will make more sense to you. And a journey also allows you to relax. And when you're traveling, you can pretty much wear what you want to wear. You can eat what you want to eat, and of course, you can choose to talk or not to talk to people next to you. But I would expect, in the long run, that you will speak to people. You will communicate with people who come here. Through the common chat box to start with. So, uh, to me, English has been something that I wanted to achieve. First of all, I had the drive. I had the desire to improve my English from grade 8 onwards. So the first question you have to ask yourself is, what is it that, what is that one incident perhaps that actually makes you want to improve your language? In general, we know we want to improve our language, but is there one incident in your life that made you really think that, oh, look, I've had enough of it. I really need to improve this language. I'll give you a minute to think about it. Say, like, what is it? Is there an incident? Is there a specific reason that made you think and decide that, yes, you really want to improve your English? If so, it'd be great if you can share what was that incident. And while you are thinking and trying to share your incident or your triggering factor, um, I'll share my incident. Right? It's only fair to tell you what was mine, and then let you share your reason or the trigger point. This was in grade 8. We were at the beginning of the academic year, and we had a new teacher who came to our class, and she said she's going to be our class teacher. And obviously, as a class teacher, she wanted to be introduced to each one of us in the class. And as you know, those traditional school days, the teacher would come to your bench, and all the kids in the bench, and we were three of us uh, on each bench. We stood up, and then we were meant to tell her the name and where we lived. I mean, nearby the school, the area region, and also tell us our grades from the previous year. That is what we scored in grade 7. Final exams. Um, and yeah, when she came to me, I told her my name and everything else. I told her my grade. I was really proud, and I said that I was, I was the topper, class topper. But I said all these things in Urdu. I didn't tell her in English, although it was an English medium school, and she was meant to be teaching social studies again, which again should be taught in English. But then we were talking in Urdu, so that gives you an idea as to what kind of a school I went to. So we were taught all subjects, but everything was taught in Urdu. Therefore, Urdu happens to be one of my first languages. Right. I told you English was my fifth language. Now, when I told her that I just added that I was a class topper, which nobody else added. Everyone said, responded to her questions. They were, I mean, she was, every student addressed each question she asked. But I just added because I was too proud of myself, I suppose, at the time. And then she asked me a question in return. She looked into my eyes and said, Ganesh, if you are the class topper, then why don't you speak in English? That question still remains with me. And uh, that's a point in time in my life I consider as the beginning of a moment in my life where I decided that someday I didn't decide, I wished, as a matter of fact, because I did not know that you have to really decide to achieve things. But I really wished at that moment that I really wanted to speak English well. So, is there a story that you can share? Is there a trigger point in your life where you thought, uh, that made you think that English, that you must improve your English? Yeah, I'll just wait for you to just type up maybe just the basics about it. Tell us what was it quickly. Yeah, appreciate typing it in the group. So it's only fair, like, I've shared my story, and it's only fair that you could share yours. Let me see one story coming up. What was the trigger point, or what is the trigger point that made you wish that you could use English in a much better way than what you do today, or what you did then? Yes. Any response? I mean, anyone, as in any story? I mean, yeah. Will you be generous enough to share your story? Yes. Can I see any comment? I mean, can I see a comment? Yes, no, or maybe you can tell me that I'll tell you next time. That's fine. I'll wait. But some comment from me. For me, yeah, I like to see. It says a live session, so I'm not sure, if I'm engaging with my audience or not. So it'll be great if you can comment and let me know that yes, you are listening to me. Yeah, thank you, Mina. And would you be sharing it at some other time or tonight? Right. Thank you. Thank you for those responses. Now, I think I will wait. Probably I'll give you some time to think about it. I won't insist tonight that you tell the story, but I'll keep asking this because I know each one of us would have had a moment in life, uh, an incident in life, a person in life who made you really think that, realize that you really need to improve your English. Right? So if you haven't thought about it, please do think and then come back next time. Next time we meet, please be be generous to share with me and of course the rest of the community. Now, uh, I saw that I think it was Mena who mentioned about understanding various accent, pronunciation, and all. Look, language has various layers, and uh, oh, there you go, Mena. I can see your story there. When I was working in school, I lost opportunities to present myself on the stage. I was rejected. Not, yeah, absolutely. It's a phenomenal motivator. Negatives or negative experiences need not always be negative. That can be absolutely positive, and people who can actually use that negative energy into a constructive work are the people who actually gain grounds or break grounds, and they are the people who actually achieve something. So, Mina, you are in good stead, and thank you for sharing, your personal story there. So, uh, these stories become relevant at some point in time, but let's start looking at language. Um, and language, what I'm trying to do is to perhaps like, peeling the layers of an onion. Like, you can just look at, peel a bit of it and see what English. It's not a holistic approach. As I told you, this is not a formal lesson, formal teaching. So we will go with the flow, and at some point in time, the the community, my audience will decide what should be discussed, right? And I'll be very candid about the language and what I know, so that you can be at home. It's a cafe, right? So just imagine, it's kind of a cafe environment. And I'm sure, like in every country, every countryside, you've had tea shops or coffee shops where people will sit just and talk about pretty much everything: politics, newspapers, and of course the local news, right? And if you are a very very young person who's wondering what these things are, maybe you should watch some older movies, maybe old movies that are about 30, 40 years older. They would have those scenes where people sit in a coffee shop in a rural setting, right? So that's a kind of an environment. This is, and certainly this is not going to be like what do you say, Starbucks or any other thing, because you don't talk. The problem with the modern day settings is that we don't talk to people. We talk to gadgets. So at least now we're still talking to gadgets, but I think we can. This is a smart way of circumventing the barrier of gadgets and communicate, try and communicate with people. So let us look at English as a language. Like any other language, English is a human language. And when I say a human language, I'm sure, like, what it simply means is it's a language that is spoken by human beings. And languages spoken by human beings have similar features, no matter what language you speak. Number one, that these languages would have evolved naturally, due to certain series of incidences, right, and circumstances. And that is how the you will find so many varieties of language around the world. In the Bible, there's a biblical story about someone wanting to build a staircase to the heaven. And in those days, it is said that everyone on earth spoke the same language. So when man was about to have the staircase, where you don't, once you have the staircase to the heavens, you don't need God to help you go to the heavens, right? So that's how the story goes, or as I understand, uh, the very at the verge of man achieving that success, God decided that this is not going to work. This is going to fail his system, right? Because he created, in biblical beliefs, God created the universe, the earth, and and the people, and the man, and of course the woman on earth. And then that is when he said, like, yeah, you will all start speaking different languages. And the moment they started speaking different languages, they could not communicate with each other, and of course the project was a failure. Now, this might be a biblical story, but the story would have been repeated in, or still gets repeated in many, many circumstances, even today, when projects, teamwork, and other things fail because you're not able to communicate with each other. That's a good story to remember, isn't it? So, when I say story, learning a language becomes easier if you can couch the language in stories. And the stories need not be a story. When I say story, it is not just a story that is printed in a book, or these days it's not that is presented in an audio book. These stories are your stories. Like Mena shared a story, right, about every incident, Mena, if you go back in your memories and say, think about how you were rejected, how you lost the opportunity just because you did not have the that amount of proficiency that you were required to have. Those stories, then they are stories that where you probably you did not enjoy. But the best way to learn stories or learn a language is to remember stories that you can enjoy. Think about the great moments in life, right? And remember those stories because stories have the capacity to capture language. And what is language if you really look at it? If you look at the physical parts, language has words, language has sounds, and language also has a certain uh, pattern in which the words can be used. In the grammar of a language, we call it the word order. For example, English will have a different word order from Hindi or other languages, Hindi or any other word language for that matter. The word order in languages can be different from language to language, but these are all features of a language. They have sounds. Fundamentally, they have sounds. Right? Uh, Words have sounds, and uh, words also, the sounds can be combined. It's like pieces of Lego. They can be combined, and those the designs that it makes, the verbal designs or the sound design that it makes, then carries the meaning. Right. This is one way to look at language. Right. So these words are and how what is a story? A story basically is a series of incidences. Uh, it's it captures an experience of a person or persons in a particular situation from one point in time to the other point in time. It's like watching a movie. There's a beginning, there's an intro, and then of course there is a in the middle, like when you get to the time of intermission, the plot has developed, and then of course it will end with a climax. And sometimes it can be an anticlimax when the result is not. I mean, the end result may not be what you were normally expecting from a story, like from a particular story or a story type. So that becomes an anticlimax as well. So any story that you could remember or you could, you know, uh, what to say, acquire. I mean, you can look around and see, you can create stories, and stories can capture language. So one of the approaches, in acquiring any language would be through, capturing the language through stories. Now, when you capture the language through stories, what is very, very important is, you know, we really need to capture the language, capture the story in the language that we want to improve. Now, this is where the for many decades in many countries, you know, uh, many different types of English language teaching approaches were implemented. And one such type that eventually failed significantly is the grammar translation method. So people thought at some point in time that the best way to learn or teach a language is by learning the grammar or teaching the grammar and translating the meaning of a language. That was the easiest way. And if you come from a country like India or Sri Lanka or Singapore, for that matter, or the Commonwealth countries where English is not the first language, you would have quite possibly been subjected to grammar translation. Learn. You would have experienced that. And we still think, I know, translation, we ask in our language, like, what does it mean? That's translation. Uh, Simply put, that's translation. Grammar translation method was one of the methods that was and still used in some places. We still use grammar translation method. But is that the best way to learn? Obviously not, right? That's what results say, because uh, that's when we have to think about how did you learn your first language? How did you learn your mother tongue? Did you learn the grammar first, or did you try to translate it first? That's where I would like you to take the question home tonight to see, like, how did you learn your mother tongue? So, what I'm going to do is, I think I'm going to bring this to a conclusion very soon. But I'd like to leave you with one or two questions. Question number one is, how do you think you learned your mother tongue, or how do you think people learn their first language or mother tongue? Because if you can understand that, then it has implications to learning the second language. And if you know how the second language is learned, it's quite easy then to learn the third language. It gets easier the more languages you learn. It gets easier learning a new language. But for tonight, I think just to sum up a few things. One, there was always a trigger point that makes us decide or want or wish badly, really badly, that we need to improve our language. So the trigger point is number one. Number two is, yes, like the trigger point, because it's a story. So when you talk about the trigger point, it's a story. Languages are best captured in stories. So it's like, when it rains and if you want to capture water, you need vessels. So it's like, you know, the stories are like that. So start thinking about stories or looking for, be conscious about the stories are already there. You don't have to create them. But perhaps after today's session, you will start looking at those stories. So now capture as many stories as possible from your life and then see how much of English you can contain in it, or any language for that matter. But in English Cafe, we'll talk about English. So how could you capture more English into those stories or those vessels, vessels of memories, as perhaps that's what a story is, isn't it? That's, I suppose, it's a nice way to put it. And then the third thing would be to see, like, okay, yeah, uh, we didn't have to do any of these things when we learned our mother tongue, or did we? That's a question for you to explore. We meet next. So before we meet next, please think about what how did you learn your first language? So I think these 3 points as take home tonight, and uh, I will share uh, the link. What is it? Please subscribe to start with, and of course, I think you should press the bell icon. I'm sure, like I know you, I know what you should do to get notification. But one thing I can promise you is that the next session I'll give you sufficient notice so that you can be there on time, you can find time, and yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Uh, I have a very busy life, but I have decided to spend some time talking about language sharing, creating experience, and perhaps what I'm trying to do is to create new stories together, and we are all going to be part of that story. So it's a pleasure to have you tonight, and I hope in the coming days we'll have a much bigger community, much larger group, conversing, and we'll find other ways of communicating in these sessions. And as you know, these sessions are absolutely, uh, you know, uh, it's a voluntary effort from me, and it's a contribution, it's a giving back to the community. So yeah, feel free to be part of this. But let me know what really benefited you from each session, because I know that it is benefiting. You can also let me know if there is anything in particular that you want me to bring up at some point in time. Something that is bothering, something that is you're excited, or something you're eager to learn or know about, and that will give me time to think about it, and perhaps bring you a more wholesome story about it again, right? So I hope you like the way that we are shaping the English Cafe, and it belongs to all of us, right? It is just that, like, I had the uh, privilege of getting it started, but where it goes will depend on all of us. Thank you for your time, your presence, and certainly let's hope we can make it a very popular place for human minds to converse, and we will explore things, and we will look at language, and you know by the medium of English, we will create, share, and cherish some wonderful experiences in the coming days, months, and years. Thank you so much. Good night, and see you in a couple of days. Bye bye.